There, freelance friends. Welcome back. Thank you again for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about 3 essential tips to manage overwhelm as a freelancer. I know that we have discussed being overwhelmed in some previous podcasts, but I feel like this is a topic that is very top of mind to me and relevant to so many freelancers that it is worth an extended discussion. Now, if you are a freelancer or you know a freelancer, you know that freelancing often looks flexible from the outside, but many freelancers know the truth. Sometimes it feels like we're constantly spinning plates while pretending everything is fine. Now, in the case that you're finding clients, delivering the work, following up on invoices, managing the tools and systems, and trying to maintain some version of a personal life in the margins, sometimes does get a little tricky. Lately, I've been starting to feel a little overwhelmed again by everything on my to-do list. It's one of those seasons where the work itself is good. I'm fortunate to have a full roster of clients and projects that I'm really enjoying, but the volume of it all has me feeling a bit stretched. And looking forward to the weeks and couple of months from here, I feel like that is where the overwhelm is coming in. So it's not actually in the moment for me, it's the anticipation of it, which may or may not end up becoming actualized. But in my case, it's still taking up some space in my brain. So I figured that I would share some tips that I am going to implement and have implemented in the past that have been successful for me. Because again, so far I've been keeping up, but I'm a little anxious about falling behind because my upcoming schedule is rather busy. And I know that there's always something I have to follow up on, prepare for, get ready to deliver or plan. And even when things are going well, the mental load can start to pile up. So I've written before that freelancing doesn't just fill your calendar, it fills your head. When you're the one responsible for everything, overwhelm doesn't mean something is wrong. As I just said, it often just means that you care and that your business is active. Still, it doesn't make it comfortable, and it's still likely to rent that space in your head. So I came up with 3 strategies that I have used that I come back to whenever the work starts to feel heavier than it should. And they've helped me move from feeling that constant pressure to something that feels a little bit more manageable for me. Now, the first one is to batch similar tasks together to reduce mental whiplash. So this is one of the earliest lessons that I learned, usually after wondering why I felt exhausted before noon. And it was that constant context of switching that became incredibly draining. In one past post, I described a typical productive day that includes writing a client deliverable, answering emails between meetings, hopping on an unexpected call, updating a proposal, and then circling back to the original work that you were planning on doing a little bit earlier. A situation like that, you're already mentally depleted. Now, of course, nothing is technically wrong. You don't have a pressing problem per se, but it still doesn't feel great because every time you switch tasks, your brain has to reorient. Different goals, different tools, different expectations. When that happens all day long, even light workloads can sometimes start to feel heavy. So when you implement batching similar tasks together, it helps reduce that mental friction. For instance, instead of responding to emails all day, maybe you decide to answer them during 1 or 2 dedicated windows. And instead of spreading your administrative work throughout the whole week, maybe you can reserve a single block of time for it, where you can do that invoicing and bookkeeping and follow-up work. And then you can leave protected time for your deep work, whether that's creative, strategic, or technical. Now, this isn't about creating a rigid schedule. I don't find personally that works very well for freelancers. It's actually why we went into freelancing, right? So that we could create our own schedule. But instead, this is about giving your brain fewer roles to play at once. When you reduce the number of mental resets that you're asking yourself to make, you can create more calm in your work, even when the volume stays the same. Now, second, you can redefine what saying yes actually costs you. I feel like this is a big one. As you might remember in a previous post, I wrote about a season where I said yes to almost everything. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of future uncertainty. I feel like many freelancers recognize and probably can align with this pattern. Taking on work just in case, stretching out your timelines, or accepting projects that don't quite fit because saying no feels too risky. Well, what I learned the hard way is that every single yes that you have has a cost, even when the work is paid. The cost might show up as longer days, reduced focus for existing clients, or the constant background anxiety of being overcommitted. What I learned the hard way is that every yes has a cost. Learning to say no, or even not right now, isn't about being difficult or inflexible. It's about being honest about capacity. So that may look like delaying a project until your schedule opens up, declining work that doesn't align with your strengths, or setting clearer boundaries around scope and timelines. I did have someone who I'd worked with in the past reach out to me last week to do a week-long project training folks locally to me. And well, the topic was in my wheelhouse and I likely would have enjoyed the project. I just explained that right now I don't have the bandwidth to take on a week-long project because I did already have some small commitments during that week. So that shows that one of the most freeing realizations is that protecting your capacity also improves client relationships rather than harming them. You are being honest and upfront, and inevitably that will lead to better work, more trust, and fewer resentful late nights. Overwhelm thrives when everything feels equally urgent, and discernment about what you should have on your plate disrupts that. The third and final tip for today is to create space to think about the business, not just run it. I really learned the value of this over the holiday break, or I should say over the holiday time period where I had a little bit of a break to step back and think about the business. I felt that I really had the opportunity to analyze what was working and what wasn't working, and maybe what could work better. And that was invaluable. But it's something that I can't do when I don't have the space to think about it. Because we all know that overwhelm often intensifies when you're stuck in constant reaction mode. You're responding to messages, meeting deadlines, solving problems, but never pausing long enough to step back and evaluate what is going on. Now, in an earlier writing, I compared this to driving while only looking at the road directly in front of you. You might avoid immediate hazards, but everything still feels tense. Your business needs regular check-ins because you need to create that breathing room. In my opinion, it's not optional. It needs to exist. Now, this doesn't need to be long or complicated. Even 30 minutes or an hour once a week really can make a difference, because you can use that time to review what's coming up and what feels heavy, to notice patterns in what's draining or what's energizing you, and then you can use those realizations to adjust your timelines, your workloads, or expectations before they become emergencies. You can also take the time to give yourself a pat on the back and acknowledge progress instead of just immediately moving to the next task. This reflective space is where overwhelm starts to loosen its grip. When you're proactive instead of reactive, you regain a sense of agency. You remember that you're not just completing tasks, you are running a business. So the bottom line here in summary is that overwhelm isn't a sign that you're bad at freelancing or that you're not cut out for this kind of work. It's often a sign that your systems, your boundaries, or your rhythms haven't caught up with your responsibilities yet. By doing things like batching similar work, being more intentional with your yeses, and giving yourself regular space to think, not just do, you can create a condition where freelancing feels more manageable and less chaotic. Because you didn't choose this path to feel perpetually behind or stretched thin. So with a few structural shifts and a lot of self-awareness, it's possible to build a freelance practice that supports both your work and your well-being. If you found this helpful, please do like and subscribe. I hope to see you on a future episode. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.